Thanks and welcome everyone. We have a great panel with us today. I'm just going to give a quick, short intro. Miss Kathleen Knowles writes historic and contemporary romances and general fiction, usually with a political or cultural themes, which is kind of relevant right now. Dena Blake is a romantic writer, eternal optimist, would-be chef, tech nerd, and occasional auto mechanic. Sounds like a very handy person to have around. Her books are steamy, sometimes funny, and always full of angst. C.A. Popovich is a hopeless romantic who writes sensual romances that usually include horses, dogs, and cats. Emily Smith comes from a family of English teachers. I bet you have some great beta readers in there. Her grandmother was a children's author, and Emily works in the medical field and uses that to write some great romances. Yolanda Wallace is an author of 18 novels, way to go, including the Lambda Award-winning Month of Sundays and Tailor Made. So we're going to be talking about some steamy characters, and I think all of y'all have written some very steamy characters. So I'm going to throw the first question out to CA. When you're writing, what are the important ingredients necessary to make not only a memorable character, but a dreamy one?
To me, it has to be somebody that is, in fact, it probably could have been one of the characters from the previous panel. Strength of character, honesty, and I like, all right, the physical aspect of it. Like before the first kiss, maybe there's a little bit of touching and, you know, just non-sexual touching and physical, and just very straightforward and honest, and shows caring to be their love interest or the other characters in the book, in the story. So I guess that's what I can come up with right now.
How about you, Yolanda?
Well, I like to make sure that all my characters are unique and they're not like a trope that you see in other books, and then make sure that they're someone you can root for and also aspire to be, and then make sure they're human, but they actually have to have, well, you want the superhuman quality, but make sure they are still human in some way. So they're heroes, but they have a feet of clay. So they're not quite perfect. We still have our quibbles, but we still, in the end, you want to do what's right. That's dreamy to me.
How about you, Kathleen?
Well, I like to write characters like Yolanda mentioned, who are not the usual run-of-the-mill romantic characters, but for me, the attraction comes from a character being vulnerable and open to falling in love, and showing tenderness and care in both the emotional and the physical sense. I like characters who have very distinct personalities and quirks, and they're good at what they do. I think someone who is passionate about what she does for a living or a vocation is someone who's going to be passionate in a relationship, and interesting and interested in other people.
Okay. We have that in common. How about you, Emily?
I think that the characters need to be confident, but also have quite a bit of humility. And I think that's always a tough balance to strike, because I think that dreamy characters are not going to come across as arrogant, but there needs to be enough confidence and sort of swagger, I guess, to make them, appealing. I think Rad is sort of the expert on that. As far as, these really like independent, strong women who, they don't need you, but they want you. And they're confident in themselves and they're grounded, but there's a sort of quiet vulnerability to them that it kind of comes through.
Okay. And Ms. Dena?
Yeah, I agree with Emily on that. They have to be strong and have a vulnerability about them, and they have to be real and believable and within reach, of the other character, of the reader, in fact, I think, enough so that the reader connects, So.
All right, next question. How do y'all like building chemistry between characters? Are you more of a slow burn or a fast inferno kind of author? So we'll start with Yolanda this time.
I'm normally a slow burn because I like to make sure that they're thinking it out before they finally get together. And I did stray from that in 24/7. I had the characters get together in the first chapter and spend the rest of the book actually building the relationship. So that was actually difficult to write because you already had the first kiss, you already had the big moments, but you have to figure out if you want to stay together or not. So that was actually fun and challenging at the same time. But more often, I'm slow burn.
Okay. How about Dena?
Yeah, I like the slow burn. I like the build up. You know, because when you have sex right off the bat, it's either just sex or it's a past relationship, which you can work with that if it's a past relationship. Yeah. But I like the, I don't know, those little flirty back and forth, that kind of stuff, you know, that the two people only see, not necessarily everybody else sees. So.
Right. Okay. And Emily?
Yeah, I like the slow burn too. I find it especially hard as when I'm writing because I really want to get to the good parts. So I really have to force myself to slow down and really build that tension, because if you just jump right to the first kiss or first sex scene or whatever, the reader's not going to care as much. They don't have as much at stake. And the more you can build the relationship between the two and the tension in whatever capacity, whether it's with this, you know, tone of angst or, you know, conflict like we were just talking about in one of the last panels, or whether it's, you know, whatever other kind of chemistry, the more you can build that, the more explosive it's going to be when you actually reach that moment.
Oh, good. CA?
Yes, definitely slow burn. I like characters to actually start to show the relationship that they're so the reader can invest in them and wanting to see them get together before they actually get together.
Okay. And Kathleen?
Yeah, I think mostly what everybody else said. I'm definitely on the slow burn side, although I've had the characters get together relatively quickly and then run into conflicts and difficulties and things that seem to make it impossible for them to stay together. But they've, you know, after all, they figure it out. When I write historical novels, I definitely have to go for the slow burn. I know you're going to ask me a question about this later, but it doesn't, in a historical context, it doesn't work if it's something that's immediate. And I enjoy developing the characters' relationship, their emotional and intellectual and psychological relationship before they get to the physical, because I think all those components are really important to attraction and to getting my two lovers together.
Now I know I've read pretty much everything, not everything, but most of everything that y'all have written. So y'all have some great secondary characters. So I was wondering, what role do supporting characters play in helping direct the dreaminess or swoon worthiness of the main characters? How do y'all use them to drive your story, I guess? So let's start with Dena.
Well, sometimes I use them just to knock some sense into the main characters, you know. A lot of times it's somebody a confidant, somebody to talk to, someone to set them straight. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I've had other characters that are not so likable, but that also makes your character look a little better. But it helps build your character's confidence, and I think confidence is a big part of having a dreamy, swoon-worthy character. So.
Good. All right, CA, what about you?
Yeah, like what Dena said, I like to have secondary characters to show the interaction between the main character and who they are and how they interact with their friends. Because most all the secondary characters are friends. So yeah, just to sort of show who the character is with someone that's not their love interest story.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I like my secondary characters as friends and confidence. I can't get through life without people I can talk to in a really honest and intimate way, and your friends see things you can't see, and I need to hear that, and I want my characters to have people like that, and yeah, it sometimes comes down to, as Dena said, knocking some sense into the main character, because we don't often see what's right in front of our faces. So that's why we have other people to help, for lack of a better word, process the relationship that we're describing, the falling in love arc that we describe in romance novels. I don't know anybody who can get through that by herself.
Yeah, you're right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yolanda?
Yeah, my secondary characters, they serve a dual purpose. I mean, they are sort of a great chorus, but they can show what the reader's thinking about the main characters and actually give the main characters a chance to be vulnerable with someone before they're ready to be vulnerable with their love interest, because you might not ready to tell your secrets to the person you're falling for, but you can tell it to your best friend. So you can see the other side, the softer side of your hero before she's ready to show it to the other person.
Okay. And I saved you for last because in this last book that you had, some great characters from another book then became the secondary characters, which I love to do that. And there's quite a few people on Bold Strokes roster that love to do that. So how was that experience?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I loved writing. I ended up really loving the characters of Galen and Rowan in All of Me. And so I really wanted to continue their story into this book a little bit. And I wasn't sure how big of a role that they were going to play in it, and actually ended up playing quite a big part. And it ended up being, first of all, really fun to kind of see where their relationship had gone years later, but also, and how they had grown up as a couple in between the two books, but also to see, to develop the relationship between Galen and Pierce, who's the main character in the new book, in First Do No Harm, who is her cousin. And they ended up sort of having this really cute kind of little bromance that develops over the course of the book. And it's really, it was a great tool for me to be able to use them to, as like, somebody had mentioned, as a sounding board. I think that secondary characters are super important for that, because otherwise you're primarily going to see, you're going to see what the character has to say to the love interest, and that's really it. And so this gives a chance for them, like Yolanda said, to be more vulnerable in a case where they might not be. And the other thing I really like about the secondary characters is it lets you see a different side of the main character, because everyone's dynamic is different with different people, right? So the way you act with your best friend or your cousin is not going to be the same way that you're going to exactly the same way you're going to interact with your love interest. And so I think it allows you to see sort of different layers of a character that you wouldn't normally get to see. So I'm a big fan of incorporating secondary characters as tools in stories.
So we're going to get a third book so that I could get a wedding?
I would like to bring them back. I really would. They're still definitely hometown favorites of mine for sure. So they may make another appearance someday.
Okay. All right, Dena, what's your idea of the most dreamy character?
I'm going to say Dreamy equals vulnerability, compassion, smart, and someone who can laugh at themselves.
That's important. That is important.
Very important.
All right. So, yeah, you write plenty of books with animals, which is great, but also some romantic intrigue as well as contemporary romances. So which is easier for you to navigate?
Well, actually, the romances with a little bit of intrigue, because it makes it an added conflict that is over and above whatever the character's internal conflicts are. And So, and it's fun. I mean, it's what I enjoy reading too, is a little bit of intrigue and with romance. So that's really good. I think my favorite is doing it that way.
If there's a chance that someone's going to die, that's always my favorite too.
Yeah,
throwing that out there.
I've never killed anybody off. I don't know that I'll ever do that.
It's really fun. You should try it. So, Yolanda, how hard was it to navigate between romantic intrigue and historical? I've always wanted to write historical, but there seems like a whole lot of research that needs to go into that. So.
Yeah, the research was the easy part. It was the language that was the hardest for me, because obviously you can't use the phrases we use now in the historical fiction, because I actually got an editor's note saying you can't use playing hard to get in 1800s. I don't think they had that phrase back then. I thought it was kind of universal. It was like, well, you're probably right. So I had to change that part. But, I read all sorts of genres growing up, and I still do that now. So I like to try to write all different genres now just to keep it interesting. But, no matter where you set a novel or when you set a novel, the premise is still the same. It's two people who are trying to relate to each other and have a relationship. So it could be 1800s, it could be now. It's the same general principle. Just got to make sure that the words they use are appropriate to the period.
Yeah, you penned some of my favorite characters in Rum Springs. I love that book. I still love that book. I read it more than once. So, and it prompted me to go visit Amish country. Walk away from there praying that, thank God, you're not Amish.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right, Kathleen, how do writers balance the swoon factor with making the main character seem real?
Let's see. Well, I don't write action heroes or superheroes or anything, or fantasy novels or anything like that, which I think have their own aspects. Characters have the swoon or dreamy aspect, but I like to make my characters really, really human, and they come with flaws. And I think more than one of the people on the panel have mentioned that at least some kind of, I don't know how you put it, but is someone who's not perfect. I mean, humans are not perfect. None of us are. And a lot of times it's the part of the attraction is someone who's a vulnerable and flawed human being. That I find that very attractive. And I like people who recognize that they're not perfect. I think Emily mentioned humility. That's a really attractive quality in someone, as opposed to someone being arrogant or dismissive of other people. I don't find that attractive at all. But for someone to fall for someone else, I have to believe that she is a real person, and comes with all kinds of aspects. Mostly good, but maybe not perfect all the time.
Yeah. Now, you, like Yolanda, also write historical, correct? So
correct.
How hard is that to navigate between the two?
Yeah, just like Yolanda said, it's a lot different in different periods of history. I made some notes here. Is that the biggest problem is historical characters don't talk and act like someone in the present. They don't say the same things. They don't. People have the same emotions. They have anger and fear and love and attraction, but it isn't expressed in the same way. And they don't have hookups. They don't go on dates. They don't do any of that kind of stuff. So you have to kind of think out of the present time and into a time where sex and sexuality was probably not going to be a topic of conversation. And so it becomes a little more difficult to figure out how to get them together. And I've written from the early 19th century, early 20th century, late 19th century. And I was able to navigate that okay, but I'm having trouble with the period of the 40s, the period around World War II, because there was a lot of different stuff going on. And it's different enough from the present that it's hard to depict what's going on with characters. But it's far removed from something that's in as far in the past as the 19th century or something like that. So that's what I think about it.
Girl, how you doing?
Yeah, they're not saying that.
All right. What makes you, what ingredient, well, besides the ingredients of vulnerability and stuff, what makes your characters not only dreamy, but swoon worthy? So, Yolanda?
That's the thing. Confidence is key, and it's someone who's good at what they do that is very, very sexy. It's very attractive. Because one of my favorite characters that I've created is Griffin, the chef in Month of Sundays, because I love food and someone who could cook well. You got me right around your finger, just like that. So yeah, just make sure that it's someone who knows what they're doing and pulls you into it because they're so passionate about it.
Okay.
Because that makes someone dreamy to me. I'm not sure if my characters are swoon worthy, but I have gotten crushes on some of my characters just writing them because I like I said, Griffin, and I like Dakota and Taylor May. So think about that from time to time.
Dena?
Yeah, I have to agree with Yolanda on that. The confidence of knowing what you're doing, but also being able to help others in doing what they need to do without ridicule or criticizing. That's a big one for me.
Do you think being flawed as well is important?
Yes, being flawed as well. I mean, because no one's perfect. And being able to admit when you've done something wrong is a big deal too. So that's it just shows how human you can be, and that to me is a great quality.
All right, CA.
Yeah, what they said. Yeah. To show their own vulnerability and respect for the love interest is very important. That is, along with the gentleness and the caring that they would display. And yeah, I guess that's really probably most for me anyway, dreamy and swoon worthy, and they're strong in their own beliefs, but they don't push them on to anybody else. And they respect the other person and what they believe and what they want. And gentleness, being very gentle too.
All right, Emily?
I think strength. Strong women take no shit. I think that is probably number one. And obviously they have to have a sort of softness about them, but I don't think that needs to be immediately obvious. So I think that characters that are strong and speak their mind and are good at what they do and don't need anyone to tell them what's going on. I think that that's probably the first thing that I notice or I try to write about.
Mm-hmm. All right, Kathleen.
While folks were talking, I was thinking about, okay, which character have I written that I really kind of had a crush on? And I have to say that was Trevor in Taking Sides. And she's a political consultant, a political operative. So she comes into a place where she really has to take charge and tell everyone in Indianapolis what they're going to have to do to solve the problem that they have. And her, who ends up being her lover, is kind of unimpressed at the beginning, but she thinks she's too overconfident and too self-important, but only finds out later that she's just good at what she's doing. She's good at what she does, and she has to project that air of confidence, like so many people have mentioned, because she has to inspire other people's confidence. She has to get them working together and doing the things that they need to do. And the other character, the main character, realizes that her personality is very genuine. It's not a front. It's a really, that's how she is as a person. And I thought she was really attractive, and I would have had a crush on her if I was one of the campaign workers who she was directing. definitely.
Now, this is one question I didn't send y'all, but I just saw the doctor sneak in there a little bit. You might want to come back because we're going to be talking about her in the next session over here.
She's mortified that she showed her face.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to put in my books is some of my characters have some stuff that have in common with me. And I think, Emily, in this last book, you put a lot of yourself in that book. I have a feeling.
No, for better or worse, it does happen.
Yeah. So
my mom always teases me about that.
Do your characters, not just in this last book, but in every book, do y'all's characters have something that is innately you? Emily, I'll start with you.
I think that I always try to write, from my very first book, my sort of main character is always who I want to be, who I wish I was. So if I were to, like, you know, all the qualities that I wish that I could have, you know, if I were to put all those things together, and it's interesting because as I've grown up over the course of, because I think I was 24, 25 when I published my first book with Bold Strokes. So it's been, you know, 10 years now. So it's really funny to see, for me, like, as I've grown up, how these main characters have also kind of grown up, because who I want to, or who I would like to be, and how I would like to see myself obviously changes as time goes on. So yeah, I definitely do write characters as like who I would aspire to be.
Okay. But do they have anything in common with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I write a lot of, you know, obviously a lot of medical professionals. This last main character is a PA. I was a little nervous about doing that because I knew people were going to draw that that association. But yeah, and I think like all characters that we write, I think regardless of whether it's the protagonist or whatever, I think they all have a little bit of ourselves in them. And I think that I also take pieces of people that I know, and, you know, whether consciously or subconsciously, and they make their way into each of the characters too. So I think they're all sort of a composite of ourselves and acquaintances and friends and whoever. So.
And I wanted to take the opportunity to thank y'all for all that y'all are doing. I know y'all are on the front lines of this pandemic that some people think is a joke, but it's not. So thank you. Kathleen, how about you? Do any of your characters have anything in common with you?
Yeah, they all have certain aspects of me. Some more so than others. I wrote a non-romance book that some of the reviewers likened to an autobiography, and that main character was very much what I was like. And then I sometimes give them professional experience that I've had or something like that. It's really hard to not do that. I like to I just like to use my own feelings and my own experiences partially because that's the stuff I understand the best. But there's other, you know, there are other as people have mentioned, there are lots of other people in our lives, and I love using people that I know to inform my formation of a character. In the last book, I make one of the main characters a Buddhist, and I know a lot of Buddhists, and I spent some time talking to them. I'm not a Buddhist myself, but I spent some time around them. So but I enjoy creating characters with all of their foibles and quirks and all that good stuff.
Okay. How about you, Yolanda?
So like everyone said, each character has a little bit of me in it, and most of the books were inspired by either someone I know or a trip I've taken, because the first book was set in Key West because I was in Key West at the time. The second book, Dylan is a movie fan, and I adore movies. And Lucky Loser came about because I love tennis and wanted to watch. They gave me an excuse to watch all my old tapes again just to do research for it. And like I said, I'm a foodie, so that's where Month of Sundays came from. So everything that you do and everything that you are ends up being in the book in some way. You can't really help it.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned that they crushed or swooned hard for Sam Murphy in Murphy's Law. So good for you.
Okay. I like
How
her
about you,
too.
Dena?
Yeah, I think there's always a little piece, just like everybody has said. Some of the stories that I've written or the books that I've written have actual instances of real life things that have happened in my life with my kids, friends, other different things like that. It's hard not to do that. I'm not a person with a ton of self-confidence. I've gotten better over the years, but as I grew up, I was very shy and not very outgoing. So some of that builds into the characters, and I try to bring them out as they grow. But I think we all do that to a certain extent, build certain things in. But definitely in all of my books, I've probably written at least one real life event that's happened. So.
That's good. No, I think it makes the books more real, if anything.
Yeah.
I think that's, you know, I wrote The Inheritance, and that I think that made it a lot more real because a lot of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
Now, before I go on, I did want to mention that please go to the question and answer section, and we'll be happy to give the questions to the authors who are here today if you're dying to know something. And also, if you look in the chat part, there's where you could go and get 15% off of selected titles. And I think all the titles of everyone here today is going to be on sale if you're interested. And so, CA, how about you? Any of you in those characters?
Yeah, I think like everybody said, it's a little bit of me and Elle. Yeah, and I know in my second book was about a veterinarian and a vet tech, and I was a vet tech for a number of years, and so that was, you know, quite a bit of my own experiences was in that book. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's even. I'm going to have to try it, but I don't know if it's even possible to write a completely different character than that's got absolutely nothing to do with me or maybe some people that I have known, yeah, in my life, friends or, you know, acquaintances. But yeah, I think it's, you know, I don't know, it's not. I think it just is. Yeah, I think that has to happen for me anyway. Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the books y'all have out right now. Dena and Kiss Me Every Day. Now, that's an interesting premise. So,
not as easy to write as you would have thought. Writing the same day over again and trying to make it different was challenging, to say the least. But I really enjoyed it. I was somebody had asked me, they've asked me several times where I came up with that concept, and my son reminded me, we watched this Christmas movie called Christmas Every Day, and I started, and I love that movie. He had to get he taped it off the TV or something for me and sent it to me, and I thought, Kiss Me Every Day, that would be kind of cool to write. I think maybe we could do something with that. But it was a lot of fun once I got rolling on it, when you got into the romance part of it. But I did it a little different than I think your typical, where everybody doesn't know what's going on. They kind of, I don't know if it's not a psychic thing, but they got a feeling, you know. Right. So it was fun to write once I kind of got through that first day.
Yeah, it was really different, but it was very, very good. Yeah, so very, very good. Yeah. So, Yolanda, the last one you have is Heart of a Killer, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, right. It is about a contract killer who's hired to kill first of all, she meets a woman in Japan. They don't exchange their real names. They end up meeting each other in New York again, but she's hired to kill someone who turns out to be that woman's best friend. So my wife loves action movies, and most of those, I'm more attracted to the villain than the hero. So I want to write someone who has sort of villainous qualities, but is actually fundamentally good at heart. So she's actually turns out to be the hero in her own story rather than the villain, but it takes a while for her to get there.
Right. I know a little bit about that, and I think you're right.
Imagine why.
I think you're right. CA, how about Through Love's Eyes? How hard was it to put those characters together?
For which one?
Through Love's Eyes, isn't that the latest one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yep, that's it. This actually is one, I think my first one that's really all just a pure romance. And it is set on Mackinac Island, which is one of my favorite places in Michigan, with a character that is a famous fashion model, and she's gorgeous, just beautiful. And the woman that her love interest is a woman that they knew, they were friends as children. And she is now Brittany. She is living on Mackinac Island, and she works for the Grand Hotel with the horses. She drives the carriages and takes care of the horses there. So it's their story. It's their, how they meet again and get over the fact that the beautiful one was in a mean girl group in high school and was teasing the other one that had she was severely burned as a child, so she has scars on her face, and so they have to get over that their past and their high school bullying that she has gone through. So it was fun to write. It was fun.
That's a good. No, it has an excellent cover too. I like the cover.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they did a nice job with that cover. Yeah.
All right, Kathleen, how about you? Your latest one was Trade Secrets, right?
Trade Secrets, and we like these sessions for shameless self-promotion. So here's the cover of the book, and in this story, I'm using actual events, an actual situation. A couple years ago, there was a lot in the news about a woman in Silicon Valley who had a startup, and she was extremely famous and much discussed. And it turned out, Elizabeth Holmes is her name, and it turned out that it was all fake. Everything about her company and what she was claiming was fake. So I decided to put two fictional characters into that situation. One of them is a venture capitalist who's an investor named Sheila, and the other one is but works at the company, works in a laboratory. There's a person also who has some aspects of my past and what I did. And so I imagine what would happen if they met and they fell in love, and they're in the midst of this completely crazy situation, and they have to navigate and coming at it from really different angles. So I imagine what it would be like for these two women to navigate through this situation and through their relationship and falling in love, and what would happen. And the third most important character in the book is actually the CEO. It's based on a real person, Elizabeth Holmes, but I made her look different. So anybody who knows anything about it would recognize the story if they read the news and heard about this. I mean,
yeah, somebody just wrote that they saw a documentary on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of documentaries, HBO documentary that's excellent. And I looked at all that stuff and read books about it and magazine articles and all that stuff. So yes, the HBO documentary is really good. If anybody's interested in looking at that. But that's the background of the book. And I just imagined the two characters in the situation and what that would be like.
Okay. And Emily?
My most recent book, First Do No Harm, just came out a couple weeks ago. And it is about an ERPA named Pierce Parker who lives in Atlanta and goes through a bad breakup. And so she decides to relocate to Boston because she has a cousin there, which is Galen from All of Me. They sort of reconnect. They haven't really seen each other since childhood. So she starts over. She moves to Boston. Decides to, try her hand at love again and goes through a bad stint of online dating and ultimately meets Cassidy Sullivan, who's a brand new ER resident to the same hospital in the same department that she works in. As the book sort of develops, you learn a lot about Cassidy's past and a lot of secrets that she has sort of been keeping from Pierce and everybody else in her life, and how those things sort of come to affect them as their relationship develops.
Definitely. Somebody just wrote Boston in all capital letters with 3 exclamation points.
Right. Represent.
I'll have to come to your apartment so I can watch a baseball game.
I'm looking right out at the park right now.
Hopefully
very exciting these days,
there will continue to be baseball.
Yeah, right.
Then a lot of these players are testing positive for COVID. So
yeah, it's not very interesting to watch the games right now, though, even from here.
So what's everyone working on next? Before we move on, give a little self-promotion. Yolanda, let's start with you.
Well, actually, busier in my day job now since the pandemic and before the pandemic, and haven't been able to write as much. So I've got 2 different projects going on. I got to decide which one to put more attention to. I'm about 20,000 words into each one. One is about 2 exes who broke up acrimoniously and trying to work together to salvage a sunken ship. And the other one is set in Alaska, and it's 2 20-somethings who trying to establish a relationship in real life when everything's being done virtually.
Oh, okay. Dena, what's next on the agenda?
Well, I just finished up the Next Exit Home, which is about a veterinarian that has to go back to her hometown to run her dad's clinic while he is having heart issues. And she's surprised to find that her high school crush is running the clinic. Crush kind of enemy to a certain degree. So that one, I've just got edits back on, and I have to get in another proposal. So that the next one is either going to be a enemies to lovers or a secret admirer type one. So we'll see. Not sure which one's in my head right now.
Yeah. How about you, Emily, besides the book about all the weddings?
Oh, yeah. Well, the future book about the weddings. Yeah. I'm going to have to work on that. I apologize. I feel like I've talked about this like 8 times over the different webinars that we've done. So I'll try to keep it as brief as I can for you guys who've already heard it. But back last fall, right around the time of Women's Week, sometime in October, I was starting to think about a new manuscript that I could get started on. I wanted to stay in the genre of medical romance because I enjoy writing it and it seems to be popular. And so I was kind of bouncing ideas around as far as something different that I could do. So I thought about sort of like a Doctors Without Borders kind of deal, where I could have, somebody like, maybe take it overseas or somewhere like that, different location outside the hospital. So I started thinking about different sort of natural disaster ideas that I could play with, and nothing really felt right. And then ultimately decided I really like virus movies and books and outbreak and such. So I thought I'll write a book about a pandemic. So I started writing a book about a pandemic with a military doctor and a CDC doctor who knew each other back in medical school. They had a thing. It didn't end well. And now they're sort of forced back together in the field to help with this pandemic. I got about 15,000 words and then COVID hit and I stopped. And I think I've gone back to it maybe once in the last month. So I really want to get back to it. But as I've said before, I'm trying to do it very cautiously. And it's been really hard to write because I want it to be, as Sandy had said, a romance with the backdrop of a pandemic, not a story about a pandemic. So I'm trying to navigate that very carefully.
You got to listen to what Sandy tells you.
Yeah, always.
She'll come down on you. Somebody does need to write something about this, though, because I would think from a medical perspective, though, that would be a really great book. So
I think people are going to have mixed feelings about it. I'm sure that there'll be people that want nothing to do with it, and hopefully there'll be other people that want to read it. But I'm committed at this point. I like the characters. I like the storyline so far, so I really have having a hard time just abandoning it. So we'll see.
All right. CA, how about you? What's next?
I have my next book is in edits right now, and it's titled Love's Truth. And it's about a woman that her parents took her when she was 12 years old to live in a cult. And then when she was 21, she escaped the cult and moved to Wisconsin Dells. And the other character is Barb Donnelly, who is a character from a previous book. She's a conservation officer in Upper Michigan. And she's there on vacation. And the cult escapee survivor works in the kitchen there. And so that's how they meet, and they're going to go from there. So it was actually fascinating. The idea came from a news thing. You know, our local news had this thing about this couple that had kids, and they ran off to Hawaii, and then they found out that they had been members of this cult, and they had 2 kids, and they couldn't find their kids, so they thought they didn't know where they were. And so I thought, well, what if I had a character that was in a cult, and then she happened to escape? So I did a lot of research on it. Excuse me, and it was very interesting. To me, it was fascinating. You know, it was fun to write, and so that should be coming out in March or April next year.
It does sound good. I've always wondered, like, what makes somebody susceptible to cult, you know, that kind of thing. And
I got a book that was written by 2 women that were also had, you know, survived and escaped a cult, and they are doctors now, and they interviewed like 60 people that were survivors from cults. And it was just fascinating to read their stories. And, you know, they have groups, they have support groups for members of these cults, people that have escaped. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting. So I'm hoping I did a good job and I, you know, authentically made this character. But yeah, it was interesting.
I'm sure you did. I look forward to reading it. All right, Kathleen, how about you?
Well, I've had a long time fascination with what happened with LGBT people during and after World War II. The saying goes that once the military brought everybody into all the big cities, either to serve in the military or in some cases work in industries where they were building ships and planes, that changed everything from queer people who lived in small towns and just hardly even knew there were other people like them. All of a sudden they were thrown together in this giant demographic shift in the 40s. And the Bay Area was a huge center of military stuff and shipbuilding. So I just started thinking about that, and I thought, well, how about 2 characters, one from the military and one from the defense industry? And I always wanted to write an interracial love story, so I decided that this would be the first one that I was gonna attempt. And you know, speaking of Sandy, you know, she's always very interested in letting me know that the important part of the story is the love story, not the cultural context. I like cultural context, and I understand that it has to be a love story, but things happen to people. So they are going to meet and fall in love. And especially when the war ended was when things got really difficult. I mean, the war was hard, but things got really difficult for people as the war ended. So the story actually starts on BJ Day, August 15th, 1945. But anyway, they meet and they fall in love, and they're about to go through a whole lot of stuff.
I see angst ahead.
Angst ahead, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the time that we're living in right now, I mean, I think Emily probably knows better than anybody, but this kind of reminds me when Katrina hit New Orleans. You know, you had to get to a point where you had to face it and move past that. So how do y'all plan to do that with this pandemic? Are y'all just going to ignore it and move forward? Well, I mean, Emily's writing a book about a romance in a pandemic, so this doesn't apply to her.
We all cope.
The rest of y'all, you know, like, ignore it and move forward like it never happened? Or are you planning to kind of put that into a book eventually? Yolanda?
That's what I'm struggling with right now, because the book you're writing now won't come out for a year. So do I need to put social distancing in now, or will it still be in there next year? So it's like, I'm putting it in now, thinking still doing this in a year, but it's like, how much do I put in? So
right,
that's why I was like a little stuck on the first book. The second book's like, it's easy because they own their phones and their apps anyway, so it's like easy to do that one than the other one.
How about you, Dena?
I'm not really sure. Maybe it might get mentioned here and there because, who would have ever thought, that we'd all be sent home to work and, told to wear masks and stuff. But I don't think I'll actually write one about the pandemic but, it's an interesting, topic. How do people function in this and the different beliefs and the people, the other things that have events that have come up during it and how everybody reacts differently. So I don't think it will be a main part of a book, but maybe some backstory.
Okay.
For the record, I definitely would not have intentionally set out to write a book about this after the fact if I had any idea. But now I'm committed, so I'm like, I feel like I should see what happens.
And maybe you can make it something beautiful come out of it.
That's right. Yeah, some romance.
Yeah.
Love in a time of coronavirus is what Sandy and I wanted to call it.
Right.
But apparently that title has actually already been written, believe it or not. Somebody has already put out a book called Love in a Time of Corona. I'm not kidding. Sandy found it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna probably make its way into my next book, I think, a little bit. It's not gonna be the main story, but I already wrote a short story about it. For some reason, it came to me in the middle of the night. And it's a love story, but it's called Self-Quarantine. It's about a couple that it happens all within one day, where they meet at the grocery store with their masks and, going down the correct sides, and the arrows. We've got arrows on the floor telling me which way to go down the aisles in the grocery stores. And it was fun to write. It's just a light love story about these two that met and they fell in love and they're, putting hand sanitizer on their hands so they could touch each other. And so, probably it will be some, down the road somewhere, just kind of get it in there to be because it's such a reality and it's such a impactful event. In our lives. Yeah. It seems like to write a contemporary romance or anything, it would sort of have to be in there a little bit, maybe. But not right now, not, oh my God, people are dying and that doesn't need to be in there now. But
yeah. No, like I said, and we had done this about a couple months ago. And I said, and who knew my hobbies were going out to eat and touching my face?
Right. Well, when you think about it, everybody probably in your family and your friends has been impacted in a different way.
Yeah.
So, it's not the same for everyone. So.
Thanks you very much, Sandy. Thank you.
Thanks all.